Hi, everyone, and welcome to this month's at Njeri Talks. I'm privileged and honored to have with me Stephane Duproz, who is the Executive Director of Cassava Technologies. He'll tell us more about this. But this month's episode is dedicated to Africa data centers and learning about what data centers are, how they work, how they operate in this market, and what the future is for them. And so I'm really honored to have Stephane, who has a wealth of experience in this market, with us today. So thank you, Stephane, for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Njeri. How are you?
I'm very well. Je sais qu'on peut parler français, mais on va le faire en anglais, juste pour vous. But you told us, I read somewhere that you're from Africa. So tell us where you're from and, what your upbringing was like in Africa.
I actually was raised in Madagascar, where I spent basically my entire life up until the age of, I would say, like 10 years of age, at which point I went back. I went to live in France.
Yeah.
But since then, there's not been 1 year I have not been on African soil. So it's my continent of birth. It is my continent of heart. And I'm extremely excited to participate in its digital development, as I am convinced that it is really a great opportunity for Africa to, play its share in the world game, and to show its capacities and to be able to express its potential. The digital world is going to allow that to happen. And that is so exciting.
So you've answered my second question, why is Africa important to you, very well. So I don't need to go into that now. But what I am interested in, how did you get into the data center world? I know at some point you were the chairman of the European Data Center Association. You've been in the digital market for a very long time. How did you even know that was somewhere that you could go into?
I always listen to the little voice in the back of my mind. that is fed with experience, fed with a kind of culture, fed with keeping your eyes and ears open. And as a sign of that, I also started in the internet in 1996. There were less than 100 websites total in France.
Wow. So at the very beginning of the internet, you were at the cutting edge. Yeah.
And then that, made me be at the center of the first days and development of the digital life world. And I soon realized that there were a lot of opportunities generated, new opportunities generated by that new sense of technologies. But all of that needed a home.
Yeah.
Because all the data we're using, when you are sending an email to me, it doesn't go from your computer to my computer.
It goes somewhere up in the cloud.
First goes to a server, you upload it to a server, that server then sends it to another server, and then I download it from that server.
Yeah.
To simplify.
Yeah. Well, let's keep it very simple, because obviously I'm not a technological buff, but so you understood that at the very beginning.
It's the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you understood that at the very beginning, how it works, and yeah.
So data centers are that home. Are the buildings where the servers creating the internet and all its content are.
Yes. So let's understand that. Okay. Let's go back a bit. And now you're the executive director of Cassava Technologies, and Cassava Technologies is a holding company, or the group company for various internet companies in Africa. So can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I mean it's an amazing adventure. As I am personally convinced, and we are quite a few at obviously Cassava Technologies, that technology is going to again release Africa's potential and allow Africa to fully express its capacities. For that, it is important that we envision a future for Africa that is digital, and that leaves no African behind. And so Cassava Technologies has that mission. So it is Cassava Technologies owns majority stakes in companies like Liquid Intelligent Technologies, like Africa Data Centers. I have been the CEO for almost 4 years, but also has other components of the digital world, typically cybersecurity. In today's world, it is extremely important that African corporations embrace the digital transformation journey, but with security. Cassava Technologies also has a renewable power business. So that whole technology is at the service of African and doesn't jeopardize any power capacity in any country at all. And Cassava Technologies also has a great super application called Sasai that does absolutely everything you need. Fantastic chat, news feeds, streamings, and also all kinds of financial services, including Sasai Remits. And also Cassava Technology owns a business called Vaya Technologies, which I'm very happy with, as the purpose of Vaya is to give everybody in Africa access to the internet, access to data at something like 10% of the cost that it currently.
Wow. Okay. All right.
The issue we're having in Africa is that usage of data remains very expensive. So Vaya is working on that to give access to data to all Africans.
I mean, so you're covering the entire scope of digital usage in Africa. You're covering not only telecommunications, you're covering cybersecurity, you're covering remitting of money, communications, WhatsApp type communications through Sasai, and also now Via, which is data usage. I mean, this is an amazing development for us. The group obviously is extremely not only profitable, but extremely relevant to Africa and Africa businesses. We were talking about Africa Data Centers specifically because you were the CEO of Africa Data Centers prior to you now moving to the executive director position of Cassava, which obviously is a much bigger group role. You envisage the future of data centers in Africa? Why is it that it was important for data centers and data center locations to be important to Cassava Technologies?
Data centers, again, are the home of the digital life. The digital life is oriented around two things, I would say. The first is bringing people together.
Yeah.
Because a data center is nothing else than a building where corporations, governments, various organizations take their IT infrastructure, their servers that currently are in-house, typically in the office at the end of the corridor or in the basement, which is not very secure, as you obviously very quickly understand, and they take that and put it in a secure place. That is a data center. That's what we do. But the other benefit of that, in addition to having a more secure environment and saving costs, is that your IT suddenly sits close to other companies' IT infrastructure. And that allows for all of those to work together by simply being interconnected through a cable. And then immediately, there are new opportunities arising from the simple fact of being together. I mean, if you think of what you're doing and what I am doing, and we don't know each other, and suddenly we start talking, and after a few minutes, we realize there are opportunities for us to work more together.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened in the digital world in a data center. That is the first thing. The second thing that drives that development is obviously the cloud. Because again, the cloud is a new way of doing things, which unlocks new opportunities. The cloud rarely replaces things. It just gives additional opportunity. It gives the capacity to banks to provide services they were not actually able to provide before.
Yeah.
So those two things, appearance of world-class data centers that you can rely on and trust. And second thing, arrival in Africa of the cloud compute platforms is the turning point of the digital transformation of the continent. Just to give you an idea, in 2018, even though Africa was representing probably 15% of the world population, and we all know it's going to go to 20 and probably 25% in the very near future, it only represented 1% of the data center capacity globally.
Wow. Okay.
Now we are changing that.
Okay.
We are giving the home, the walls, the organization, the pampering for the creation in Africa of digital hubs that will be the foundations for its digital transformation. That's what a data center is.
So let me ask a very basic question. The data center is a physical representation of the information, of the content that is shared by organizations, and the cloud is a backup to that. Will we still need both in the future, or do you see it as cloud-based only? Is that a legitimate question?
It's very close, Njeri. The only thing that one could challenge is probably the cloud is not the backup of a data center.
Okay.
The cloud is basically a different way of organizing your IT.
Okay.
Where instead of having to buy a server yourself, to buy a software license yourself, that you're only using at 5 or 10% of its capacity and 5 or 10% of the time, you don't do that. You don't invest in all of that is not useful to you. It's the software developer that gives you when you want, and to the quantity you need only, access to its server. So you don't have to invest, and you only use what you need. So part of the existing IT is migrating into that, but part of the existing IT cannot migrate to that. So typically you will see organizations, and I'm saying that every day, in Africa and in the rest of the world, migrating their servers, so all of that, they have servers, they put it in a data center where there are also cloud operators, and then they progressively transfer what they can transfer, migrate it to the cloud, under the same roof, and keep what cannot be transferred to the cloud also under the same roof, and that allows all of the communication between the two parts faster and cheaper. So that is, what we are seeing is what we call hybrid configuration, where organizations use both a private, their own IT infrastructure and cloud capacities.
So let's talk about the way that the data center works, right? Because data centers are new to this jurisdiction. In fact, for Africa data centers, how long have you been in Kenya? You're in Lagos, Nairobi, and also South Africa, where you have the biggest locations. How long have you been in the Kenyan market?
Under the brand Africa Data Center, 4 years, but in reality 10, because we acquired a company in Kenya called KDN, Kenyan Data Network. And that company had that great data center that is still, our flagship in Kenya, and had been having it for years already. So it has actually that leading ecosystem, where all companies get together to work together and save costs. And it is by far the leading ecosystem in Kenya and actually in East Africa.
Why was Nairobi the base for you as opposed to any other African jurisdiction?
Originally, Nairobi, Johannesburg, and Cape Town were what Africa Data Centers has been built to start with on.
Yeah.
But and we are by far the leader in Kenya, and one of the leaders in South Africa. But we belong to a group that is Pan-African. I mean, ADC belongs to a group that is Pan-African. That is Cassava Technologies, operating in something like 15 countries in Africa. So Cassava Technologies, and consequently ADC's vision, is natively Pan-African. We want to participate to this fantastic adventure of digitizing Africa, but everywhere in Africa. So we've been working heavily on getting the capacities to do that, and we have recently secured $500 million that is already funded to develop data centers all over the continent.
Wow.
And we have actually launched the largest data center expansion plan in Africa in history, over 10 countries.
Wow. So that's where it's going, I guess. But I thought you were going to say that Nairobi is a hub for East Africa, so I guess it was a location based.
Sorry, for East Africa, Nairobi is the obvious.
Yeah. That was the obvious choice.
Out of that. We are considering other cities in Kenya and in East Africa. As East Africa is just a fantastic place. I mean, you have seen recently that DRC is joining the East African bloc. So it gives you a sign of the attractivity of generally East Africa, but Kenya is the leading country for that. And Nairobi is the leading city in all of that region.
Yeah. So I want to get into the legality of what we're talking about with Africa data centers, right? So we're talking about a physical location where companies are leasing. It's a lease space. Is it a lease? You're shaking your head.
It's very rarely a lease.
Okay.
It can be a lease when very large organizations will take very large amounts of space, typically a whole floor, or potentially sometimes a whole building.
Yeah.
In which case, it makes sense that we consider working on a lease base. But what our customers are looking for when they come to us, again, it's not only using space. It is getting all of that knowledge of how to improve the efficiency, the security of its IT infrastructure. So more often than not, they kind of delegate to us some of the management of all of that.
So, I mean, that's interesting itself, because what you're saying is that you're taking on a company's IT or you're taking after the welfare of their IT systems. Even in that sense, there's a legal obligation there. Let's talk about that, because how are you, first of all, the protection of the IT itself, how do you make sure that you're protecting that? And secondly, how are those agreements made when they have data that they are obligated to keep confidential just for data protection purposes? So how do you square that?
So let's get back to your original question.
Okay.
Because of what I said, we currently have something like 300 customers. Only a handful have ELIS.
Okay.
It's probably actually only 2.
Wow. Okay.
The other
298.
yeah, the other 298. We have a contract of service. So we provide data center services.
Okay.
The data center service being provided is a capacity for the customer to put its IT infrastructure. It is not our servers on which the customer puts its data. That, as a name, it is called hosting. We don't do that.
Okay.
We house, meaning we provide the space, we provide a capacity to get power, to obviously power the servers, and then the customer takes its servers and put it in that space.
Okay. Okay. So that's what I would have thought. That's what I would have thought is the leasing part, because you're actually leasing space, right? In a building.
We're not leasing, we are providing a service.
Okay. So the service is you can use our space.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay. Okay.
So we provide service based on the number of square meters you're going to use and the number of kilowatts you're going to use.
Okay. So once you do that, then you're saying it's your information, you're just using our space. And what are you providing in addition to them? The powering of that, so the electricity and etc.
We provide various kinds of securities.
Okay.
First, we provide the security of delivering power.
Okay.
It is extremely important because very often when IT has outages, it is linked to loss of power.
Correct.
We provide that security through redundancy, resilience, all sorts of things that are our DNA. We provide the security of what I call the climate control. Climate control is the servers can only run within a certain range of temperature.
I see. Yeah.
And actually humidity.
Okay.
So we provide security in making sure that you always have that temperature and humidity. We also provide access control.
Yeah.
Obviously, if your servers are somewhere, you just don't want anybody else to have access to the servers. So there is a variety of security systems that make sure that you can only have access to your servers and nobody else can have.
Okay.
And obviously, there was always security in terms of fire detection and extension. That is also very important.
I mean, so basically, it is an extremely vital service to companies who are relying on you to ensure that their servers are protected, secure, and everything else. The contract between you is a contract of service, as you've already explained. But in giving those assurances, what happens when it goes wrong? Has it gone wrong?
So far, no.
Cross your fingers.
The reality is that statistically, it really can happen. So we have service level agreements within our contracts where we cannot guarantee that is never going to be an issue. We can't guarantee that, But what we can guarantee is that, obviously we'll do all the efforts possible to prevent it from happening.
Sure, yeah.
And if we don't, then we pay penalties.
Yeah, I mean that makes 100% sense, and I appreciate the importance of first of all the agreements and also the structure of those agreements. What I was interested in is you then stretching that service that you provide into sharing of content within different providers in the data center.
We are facilitating that.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
You're facilitating the interaction between different entities.
In other words, if you are a customer of ADC, I am another customer of ADC. Say you are the central bank and I am a bank, and obviously we have a lot to communicate about. You would call the data center. We would call the data center and say, please interconnect us. And data center would put the necessary cabling infrastructure for us to interconnect. Now, the data center, at ADC, we don't deal with the content that is being shared or exchanged.
Yeah.
We don't see it.
So in a way, you've really offset your liability, because you're saying all I'm doing is cabling. Anything that's within the content that you're sharing is up to you to have sorted out between you two beforehand.
Exactly the same as if you were not in the data center, but still in the house, except it's much more secured, much cheaper. And again, in terms of security for the flow of data, if it remains in the data center, it's much more secure than if it goes through the internet.
Yeah. So some of the criticisms of data centers, aside from the fact, of all the positive things that you're providing to companies, is obviously the green impact on, the buildings themselves and etc. The environmental impact on that, the way in which the data centers are structured. What do you have to say about how are you dealing with that? And are you adhering to certain standards? Because I guess we are a bit behind. Europe has already dealt with regulating data centers, in terms of trying to legislate for that. How are you doing that within Africa data centers?
There are two things, Njeri. The first one is it is wrong to believe that data centers are bad for the environment.
Okay.
It is very wrong. Two steps there. First step, the digital life. The digital life is saving a lot of the human being carbon impact. You're too young for that, but I have lived a long time without the internet. And when I had to negotiate a contract, say in Mombasa when you're in Nairobi, I actually had to fly to print the contract.
Yeah, and take the contract.
To Mombasa, discuss with my partners, fly back to Nairobi, modify the contract, print it again, and fly again, etc., etc. Whereas now you just send it by email. So the digital world is a huge saver of the human carbon footprint. Now, that is step one. Step two, if that digital world was not gathered in a data center, it would consume 3 to 4 times more power.
Yeah.
Because we mutualize equipment, because we're so big that we have access to industrial equipment. Take our 300 customers. They need security of all of what I explained earlier, power, climate control, etc.
Yeah.
So they would have, if we were not existing, they would have had to buy their own. So each of those 300 would have one, or actually potentially 2 generators, backup generators, in case power was, during load shedding or grid outages. Yeah. So there would be 600, whereas to serve those 300 customers, we probably have 30 that are, and it's the same for every piece of equipment. Surveys have shown that a kilowatt hour consumed in the data center is something like 7 or 8 kilowatt hours that are not consumed elsewhere.
Okay. Okay. So you're defending yourself very well. How it's facts. How are you dealing with the green side, making it more green in terms of the buildings, etc.?
That is step one.
Okay.
Now that that's being said, of course, we are trying to be as efficient as possible first. So we invest a lot in equipment that allows us to deliver the same service while consume less.
Yeah.
And also, we are working everywhere we operate in trying to get as close as possible to 100% renewable energy consumption. Actually, we are committed to reach carbon neutrality in this decade.
Is that a commitment of Africa Data Centers? Are you working together with other data center operators as well to make sure that you're adhering to a certain standard?
Well, we are setting up the standards. I mean, again, we are the largest Pan-African operator of data centers. Remember that we also have within Cassava Technologies capacity to invest and develop renewable energy power ourselves.
Yeah.
So actually, and you know what? Our customers want us to do that. Our customers also have commitments they made to reduce their carbon footprint. And the data center is part of that. So they are very keen into having the possibility to offset what they are using with renewable power or with other sources of decarbonizing. So it is extremely important that we at ADC give that capacity to our customers, and our internal capacities are helping a lot. So now, if you want to talk about the standards that are appearing in Africa, as you said, everywhere in the world, actually, I have been the chairman of the European Data Center Association, and as such, I've been extremely instrumental into developing the European Union Code of Conduct for Data Centers.
Correct. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, guess what? I am now vice president of the African Data Center Association, and we are starting the works to introduce an African Code of Conduct for data centers.
Great. I think that is, amazing. I think that will be very useful, and we would like to see that, just so that we know what companies have to adhere to. In terms of the next criticism, let's talk about data leaks. How are you dealing with that then?
It is hugely important. It is hugely important. It is very important to protect the data. And there are companies, there are suppliers, providers specialized in that thing. It's not our job. Data centers do not do that. Data centers provide a secured physical environment for organization to have their IT. Now, the way they protect their data, it's not, we don't touch, we don't see their data. It is their responsibility. Now, obviously, as I said, within the group, within Cassava Technologies group, we have a cybersecurity business that can help this, and I agree with you. It is a tremendously important aspect of everything. As you know, Africa is now globalizing.
Yeah,
it comes with opportunity, but it also comes with risks, and it is really critical that the organization wishing to benefit from those opportunities also can protect them from the potential risks.
Yeah. So you've talked to us, I mean, Cassava Technologies is a huge group. You've talked to us about your monopoly in the data center market, essentially.
Oh,
Kind of monopoly, because you're basically the
leadership,
biggest. Sorry?
leadership, leadership,
Leadership.
monopoly. I don't know who today is the leading car manufacturer in the world. Say it's Toyota. Toyota doesn't have a monopoly; it's just a leader.
I guess I shouldn't have used a legal term. I mean, you're the biggest.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, what are you doing well, aside from what you've told us and what you're doing well? What are you doing badly, or what can you do better then? Because I think we've talked a lot about the positive gains and not enough about the criticisms in terms of what can we do better to ameliorate what is already in existence.
We have speed is very important, and I know I would want that we go faster.
Yeah.
Because the opportunities are really there for Africa, again to compete globally.
Yeah.
And to compete globally, we need, as Africa data centers, to provide the infrastructure for Africa to do that. And we should have gone faster, bigger. That, though, is now remediated. And as I said, we've been able to secure $500 million to set up the leading data centers in 10 countries. In countries we already operate, but also in new countries, such as Ghana, Ivory Coast, Morocco, Egypt, others.
The ideal scenario is for the data that you are actually housing to be African data from African companies. That's the idea.
Yeah, okay. That's exactly what we do.
And so have we got the capacity for that in Africa?
Yes, of course. And we are African. And one of the key missions of ADC, today, when you are sending me a WhatsApp together with a picture, again, it's not sent directly, it's sent to a server. So that server is not in Africa.
Yeah.
So African data, even though it's exchanged between Africans, doesn't physically is in Africa.
Yeah.
So we need to bring that African data back to Africa by providing Africa with secure and reliable infrastructure for all of those servers to actually be in Africa. And governments are going to be instrumental in putting constraints and regulations as to how, starting with personal information, as to how that personal information simply cannot leave the country.
Yeah. And I mean, everything that you've told us is a real education for people who are not familiar with data centers and how it works and what it means to have a data center. I think you're way ahead of everyone else.
With that and enjoy the opportunity.
Yeah. So Stephane, thank you so much for joining us and for giving us this education, because to be honest, these are things that we don't deal with day to day. We see it and we use it, but we don't really understand it, how it works. So I really appreciate your time. This has been a real education for us. How do you, just as a final question, how do you see, aside from the speed and the building and the use of African data in Africa, how do you see the future be? What is this? Are we talking about a 10-year space? Are we talking about 20 years? What are we talking about?
We're talking about much faster than that. I mean, we started probably all of us a bit slow, but now it's a big catch up. The 10 data centers in 10 countries that we are talking about, it's a matter of 2 years.
So by 2025, I read that extract from the McKinsey report because I'd seen you discussing it before about the growth potential. And I think that's amazing. So by 2025, we'll be in a better position than where we are now.
Oh, probably sooner than that, actually.
Yeah. Oh, so wow.
Those 2 years have already started. And you will hear of us and we'll be able to help Africa in a largely expanded number of countries, creating those digital hubs to support the development of that new way of developing economies, and to leave no African behind to start with, and then again to unlock Africa's huge creativity and dynamism.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stephane. I really appreciate your time. This has been quite a timely discussion for us, and we look forward to seeing what Africa Data Centers does in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Take care.